I'm sure. Well, let me introduce myself. I'm Cynthia, and I'm the host of the reality series CPS Horror Stories. And it's Lorelei, right?
Lorelei, yes.
Okay. Do you want to introduce yourself? You already told me where you're from, but go
Yeah.
ahead.
Okay, my name's Lorelei. I'll be 35 the end of this year. I live in northeastern Wisconsin, just south of Green Bay. My sons are 16 and 12. My case has been closed for many years now, but I was a child and a mother of the system. So, like, I have experience on both ends of it.
Well, let's start when you were a child. What
Okay,
happened?
the first home, when my parents divorced, my mom was a very young mom, and my father was much older than her. He had a education, a good career in the psychiatric field. It was a classic power dynamic situation. He was very abusive and controlling, and she finally left. But it was 1989. She never filed any of the abuse. She was, a housewife with no education. She ran to my grandmother's house with us girls. And my father had staked out grandma's house in a rental vehicle for 2 weeks around the corner because he knew it was 89 in Wisconsin. The kids walked to the park from grandma's house. So my mother, knowing my father, was terrified and refused to let us leave the house for 2 weeks. And eventually, my grandmother, her sister, and my 9 and 10-year-old cousins convinced my mom, to let the kids walk to the park. At the time, I was 4, my sister was 5, and our older sister was 6. As soon as we passed my father's vehicle, he got out and told me and my sister Brittany to get in the car. We were all really confused why he didn't tell Christy. Later on, we would find out that's how Christy found out he wasn't her father. So if my father were to have taken my oldest sister in the vehicle, then my mother could have sent the police after him because she's not his. When my sister got in the vehicle, my cousin tried to interject, and she sent her brother because he was the fastest, back to the house to get the adults. A tug of war broke out over me and her. My dad told her to stay out of it. She tried to stop us. He eventually got me in the car. And after 2 weeks of hell, basically, the police told my mom, in the end, all my dad did was pick up his kids. So she had to wait for the first hearing of the divorce 2 or 3 weeks later, at which point the judge basically said, like, what are you doing? Give your wife the kids. So my dad gave us back to her, and my mom promptly proceeded to run to Arkansas. And so this is from Wisconsin, like northeastern Wisconsin. She ran down to Arkansas with a new boyfriend she had met, violating court orders and essentially making herself a felon, and me and my sister missing children. We were down there for 10 months before they found us. And they found us because my mom left the boyfriend after 2 months when she realized he was worse than my father. And then we spent 8 months moving around Arkansas hiding from him. He finally found us in his work vehicle, which happened to be an 18-wheeler. And we were in a 1980s Roadrunner grocery getter, my mom and her 3 kids. Long story short, a Good Samaritan saw him try to run us off a bridge. We somehow made it back to the trailer park my mom was hiding in at the time, and the Good Samaritan sent the police to check on us. So this man just tried to kill us, and the police come and start running names, and the us being missing kids pops up, and the felony, and all that. So they proceed to arrest our mom. My sisters, they're numb at this point. The police tell them to get in the car. They get in the car. I lost like my whole 4-year-old mind in that moment and ran up a tree. I refused. I snapped. And eventually the police got me out of the tree. And, I'm at the point now where it was 30 years ago, and I have a dark sense of humor, and I laugh at trauma as a coping mechanism. But I don't know if you've ever tried to put a cat in a pet carrier, but that's what these officers look like, trying to get me in the back of the squad car. Yes. And from there, we spent 2 weeks in a horrible foster home till my father could come get us. At which point, we realized no one told my dad, no one told the system that Christy is not his. We weren't about to tell them and leave Christy there alone after we just lost our mom. So no one said anything, and my dad just took all three of us. He was supposed to give my sister Christy to my mom's mom as he drove through her city, to get home to ours. He did not. He just took all three of us up north. And my grandmother had to show up 2 weeks later with police to get Christy back. And me and Brittany stayed for about 8 years up in the North Woods with our father, who one of the nicest things I have called him by is his first name. This was not a good or easy man to live with at all. And what started the foster care chain from 12 to 18 is a teacher. She saw the warning signs. We lived in a very small town. We had a graduating class of 40 kids, a grade level maybe. And she watched me grow up. This was my 6th grade teacher at this point. She's known me since I was little, and she saw the signs of abuse and depression and stuff like that. And she had called me down to the principal's office to try to talk to me, and she was taking a really big gamble in the mid-90s up in the North Woods, because if I just clammed up and didn't say anything and told my father that they were pulling me out of class to ask questions like this, she could have gotten in trouble, back then. But I basically threatened suicide if they sent me home, and that put me on a psych hold for 3 weeks, which then took about 6 months and 2 foster homes to be given back to my mom. My sister that was with me up north with our father, 3 months after I was taken, there was a situation in front of witnesses finally, and they took my sister, and then she came up to the foster home with me, and then we were both given to our mom. So at this point, we're going on 13 and 14, and we haven't lived with our mother since we were children. I actually forgot what she looked like for a few years. We were allowed to see her at her wedding to my little brother when my father had us, and it had been so long since he let us see her, I confused my auntie for my mom. Like, my aunt came up to us, and I just kind of looked, we didn't see our mom yet, like we just got to the church, and my aunt came out to greet us, to take us inside, and I look at her, I'm like, Mom? Question. The look my aunt shot my father. Like, no, baby, I'm your auntie, but here, let me bring you to your mom. Like,
how long had it been?
At that point, I probably hadn't seen my mother for 2 years, but this was, age 4 to age 6, trauma the whole way,
Of course.
Yeah, so she finally got me and my one sister back, in middle school. We were going into 7th and 8th grade. She had my one older sister. That's what saved her from prison time, is my father wanted to take my eldest sister and press charges on my mom. But when he realized that my grandmother would raise Christy, he decided to not drop, he dropped the charges on my mom, and let her out to keep Christy. He considered it an act of kindness. I believe my father was a complete narcissist, borderline sociopath, and it was just something to hold over her. I mean, I don't know. It was crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so at that point, my mom hadn't had us since we were, little. And there was 5 of us now, us 3 older girls, and then a younger brother and a baby sister. And it took her about 13 months to drink us all into foster care. Like, yeah, she has a serious alcohol problem. There were multiple situations. The last one, she was at the bar for 15 hours. And at this point, I was actually on a psych hold due to, basically emotional trauma of the past 13 years and medications that the doctors had me on. So I was out of the home at the time, but my 4 siblings were home. And my mom was gone at the bar for like 15 hours. And the toddler was sick. My sisters were, 15 and 14, and the little ones were 6 and 2. And, the 2-year-old was sick. My mom was supposed to take her to the doctor that day, but she never came home after work. So when she got home, my oldest sister, jumped her case about it.
Yeah.
It was 3, 4 in the morning. My mom's, stumbling drunk in the door. And my mom decided, well, fine, I'll take the baby to the doctor, and thought she was going to put the baby in the car and leave. My sister that was up north with me, she took the 2 little ones into a bathroom and called 911. Well, my mom and my sister basically brawled all over the house. At one point, they were wrestling down a staircase. They were choking each other out. Like, it was, I was only told about this after the fact. I just know, what victim witness and police reports say. But my mom was taken into custody. We were all scattered. Christy was the eldest, was saved by relatives. Me and Brittany, the sister up north with me, we originally went to one foster home, and the 2 little ones went to another. Eventually, me and the one sister were separated into separate group homes, and the baby girl, her father took custody of her. And my brother was adopted by the foster home that the 2 little ones were in. He was old enough at that point, though, and the family did allow him to maintain contact with us.
Yeah.
Like, he knew he had this whole family. He knew who his sisters were, all that. But yeah, that continued for years. There was a string of foster homes, group homes, different juvenile type facilities. And the kicker is, my mom finally got me back just before I turned 17. And at this, she's literally had me for 1 year of my life since I was 4 years old. And under the circumstances, why? And she did not understand why I didn't respect her as an authority figure. She let my sisters do anything they wanted and tried to treat me like a prisoner. Within 1 month, she sent me back to my father that she, quote, spent my childhood getting me back from. That did not go well. I was with my dad from 6 months down in Fort Wayne, Indiana, my junior year of high school. And I started running away from home, obviously. He had me put on probation because I guess the laws in Indiana at the time were ridiculous. Parents could literally just request that their teenager get a parole officer and probation officer, I mean. And mine was furious. He told me, he's like, you're a good kid. You get good grades. You don't skip school. You're not in gangs. You're not on drugs. Why are you in my office? I'm like, dude, you need to talk to my dad about that one. And eventually he started having me institutionalized, it's not jail, but shelter care, but on a metropolized scale, where they send runaways. And my probation officer asked me if I wanted to go home. I was like, well, no, he's just going to do this next weekend. So I basically played a game of chicken with my father and threatened his reputation. Dr. Cardine and his wife had a good reputation in the city they lived in now. And his teenage daughter is out of control in a delinquent facility. After 1 month, he sent me home to my mom. So 4 months later, I was pregnant with my first son. He's the one that I have the CPS history with.
And this is the one that you said he has autism?
Yes, Vinny is the diagnosis changed as the definition changed with the DSM-4 going to the DSM-5. He had what they used to classify as Asperger's, but now it's just autism spectrum disorder. So if you understand the condition in any way or spend a good length of time with him, you can see something's there. It's a little more social. He goes quiet or hyperactive. But I mean, besides that, intellectually, he's ahead of his peers. As far as like cognitively, like being able to take care of himself at an age appropriate level, he's fine. It's just emotionally, socially, there's some struggles, and those have been blown up and taken advantage of with different issues we've had with the system over the years. But yeah.
So, back when you were a child, what would you say the worst form of abuse you went through? Because you said the nicest name you called your father was his name.
His first name.
I
Yeah.
caught that. So why is that?
He was as much verbally abusive as well as physically. I do believe my sisters and I were being groomed for sexual abuse. However, my father's victim profile was more of a mid to mature teenage girl. And he basically lost us in the grooming stage entering that age frame.
Can
He,
you
he has a record and a history,
can
but
you
it's
explain the grooming thing?
like he would tell us very sexual, inappropriate jokes since we were very young. I remember one incident in the 3rd grade. We had one of those big trampolines in the front yard, and my sister had a very blessed friend at a young age, and we'd be jumping on the trampoline, and he would yell out things like, "Turn around so I can see him bounce." We're like 3rd, 4th grade.
Wow.
I would catch him like in the hallway, looking into my sister's room, watching her change, um, stuff like that. He's the one that most physically resembles our mom, but she was also the favorite because she knew to sit down, shut up, and look pretty, as they say. Um, I was my mother's child, in every other way that my father hated. I definitely took the brunt of his abuse. What are the guidelines on language? Because one of the best examples I can give you is pretty bad.
But
Okay, one time when I was 5, I had stole a pack of bubble gum, and he caught me after we had gotten home. I was under the table eating the gum, and I will never forget the look on this man's face. Like, I thought he was gonna kill me. He yanked me out of from under the table by my ankles and beat me like a dog the whole time, saying things like, "I'm a no good, goddamn, lying, thieving, dirty little whore, just like my mother." That was his favorite. No matter what happened, no matter what he said to me, just like your mother. At the end of it, that was his favorite. This was like daily life. There were ER visits. I've gone down staircases. The man was psychotic. But it was the 90s in the North Woods. And Dr. Cardine was treasurer of our Lutheran church. He wouldn't hurt his kids. Yeah, it literally took me threatening suicide in front of my 6th grade English teacher and my principal in her office for them to even call a social worker to order a psych hold. And it was during the process of the psych hold, once I got CPS involved, that the foster homes and the custody change started for me and my sister.
wow.
Yeah. So yeah, not a good start to be 17 and pregnant. Literally when Vinny was 2 weeks old, I got my first apartment in low income. So I'm 18. I have my own apartment. I have this 2-week-old baby, but I'm literally supposed to be at my senior prom. Like, this should have been senior year of high school. I wasn't at home because my mother got evicted from where we were living when I was 6 months pregnant that winter. And I was couch crashing with basically friends and relatives for the last 3 months of my pregnancy, waiting for the apartment. High risk the whole time, conception to delivery, very difficult labor. The father was nowhere in sight because there was actually an armed guard on the maternity ward outside of my bedroom because he got out of jail early. That man was supposed to be incarcerated for the duration of my pregnancy at least, but he got out on good behavior during my third trimester. I was 17, he was 28, and on felony parole. And the moment he threatened my child's life because that baby wasn't going to live to prove it was his, because that was evidence of his crime in the state we lived by the laws we had. So I was a minor and he was on parole. So the second he threatened the baby, I told my mom she can call the parole agent because she was waiting to do that, but she was okay with letting this man move into her home with her 17-year-old daughter before I got pregnant. It was a mess.
Why was she letting him move in?
Yeah, literally like 5 weeks from beginning to end. This is insane. I have teenagers now, and I have no idea how my mother ever justified this. I was with the man for 5. What's that?
Why was she letting him move in?
Because I asked her to.
Oh, you guys were dating.
Yeah. Yep. We were together for 5 weeks from beginning to end.
Okay.
And the last 2 weeks of that 5, I was in Carson City, Nevada with the man, with her permission, because he wanted me to meet his mom. So my mother, a grown divorced woman with teenagers, let her 17-year-old daughter get on the Greyhound with a 28-year-old felon and drive to the Mexican border to meet his mom for 2 weeks. Like,
what were his felonies? Uh-oh, hold on, you're on mute. Okay.
Hang on. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, someone tried to call me. But like that is like how human trafficking stories on Lifetime start.
What were his felonies?
Violence, sex. He's attacked one of the mothers of his children with a knife.
Yeah. How many children does he have?
Oh Lord. Okay. Number 3. And there are at least 4, maybe 5 after him. We have absolutely no contact with that man. I saw him inside a courtroom a handful of times when Vinny was younger, and Vinny had 2 supervised hours with him when he was 4 years old that he has no memory of.
So he's not the father of both children.
Correct, yes. They have different fathers.
Okay. So let's go to the first day that CPS came in your life as an adult and a parent.
Okay, so what had happened was when Vinny was a very small infant, I started going through some serious medical problems, mainly with my kidneys at first. A lot of kidney stones, kidney infections. And when he was 4 months old, I have a half sister from my father, ironically, but she was raised by maternal grandparents her entire life. She's much older than me. She took Vinny for me for a couple months so I can get my health under control. It was just me and the baby, and I couldn't stay out of the hospital. So I trust my sister with him for 4 months while I get my health under control.
What were the health issues?
Mainly kidneys. I kept getting repeated kidney stones and kidney infections. The kidney infections required hospitalizations and intravenous antibiotics to treat the infection.
Do you have lupus?
I'm sorry?
Do you have lupus?
I do not. Thankfully. I don't know if I was just in such a stage of fight and flight my whole life. Like maybe if there was like some like dehydration, 'cause I didn't drink enough water. I was constantly exhausted. So I wonder if just like my shit childhood, maybe like caused like some effects there for a little while.
That's what a homeopathic doctor has told me.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if you know my health issues.
Girl, I feel you. So as soon as the kidneys started to get under control, I started getting these horrible mystery pains in my low abdomen. And I kept going to the ER, and they kept telling me I just had an ovarian cyst rupture. And that made sense because I've actually had ovarian cysts since I was like 12 years old. Another horrible, horrible. But they told me an ovarian cyst rupture, you're fine, go home. And I did that for a week, and I ended up being brought back to the hospital via ambulance, vomiting, stomach foam, the whole nine. The cyst ruptured, whatever came out was toxic, and it glued my internal organs together. It formed abscess in and on my appendix and my right fallopian tube. I was a month shy of 19 with an 8-month-old baby, and I was on the table for 5 hours. I flatlined twice. They got the appendix and the right fallopian tube out, got everything unglued and stitched me back up. I was in the hospital recovering for 11 days. And the day after I got out, I was at home folding laundry. I hadn't spoken to my sister for a couple weeks, for obvious reasons. And I knew nothing was wrong.
Wait,
Yeah, yes.
you say obvious reasons. Can you go back to that? Why? Sorry.
No worries. Just the recovery. My sister, she was recently divorced and had a 5 and a 6-year-old of her own, as well as my infant. I'm in the hospital recovering. We didn't communicate much for those 2 weeks,
Okay. It wasn't because of something.
Right. There wasn't, so like communication was there, like, pictures are being sent, we would text, right. But like there just wasn't, any kind of heavy communication. I wasn't given any kind of communication that something was wrong in any way.
Got it.
Nothing like that.
Got it.
So I just trusted that my baby was in good hands and focused on my recovery and let her handle her house that now had 3 small children. And the same CPS intake worker that took me and my siblings from my mother 6 years ago knocks at my apartment door with 2 Nina police officers to inform me that my infant son was not in Madison with my sister, but he was a mile down the road in a foster home because my sister just couldn't do it anymore. And if she couldn't get kinship care set up for the baby, she was going to, quote, leave him on their doorstep. This is what the woman says to Child Protective Services about the baby that's not even hers. Like, what did she think was going to happen? And it turns out she told my mother she was struggling. Like, my mother knew that things were getting difficult, and she knew if I knew how difficult they were getting, I would have went and picked up my baby.
Right.
And my mother decided that that wasn't the right thing for me to do right now. So she decided to just take me out of the decision. To this day, she wants to vilify my father's daughter for what she did to my son, but takes zero accountability for the role she played in it, which I'm honestly not surprised, but it's still infuriating. So, they tell me
the decision that was made, it was to call CPS.
Yeah. And my mom knew, she knew that's what it was getting to. She had some conversations with my sister, and my mom knew that she was exhausted, she was frustrated, and that it was coming to a head. And if I understood that things
why couldn't your mom help out?
She was still very much so an alcoholic. I have my mom and 2 sisters that lived in the valley with me at the time, and given the ages and stages of life that everyone was at, there was not one person that was both able and willing to take Vinny under the circumstances I needed with the health issues. And that's how my sister Katie down in Madison got involved. So I guess my mom was never stepmom or anything. Like, Katie wasn't around during my mom's marriage to my dad. Her grandparents had her, but like they knew each other, they were known to each other. There was communication on like some kind of, familial level, when I was a teenager. But yeah, so and then for the next 15 months, I was never in, they investigated, they had doctors talk to me, they put all kinds of hoops in front of me. I was never once found guilty of any form of abuse or neglect in any way, shape, or form. I had a live-in romantic partner who did not happen to be the child's father. This was just my boyfriend. I had a live-in romantic partner who was working. We lived in low income, bills were not that high, and I did have some form of a family support system. And their big stick was I could not stay out of the hospital long enough to take care of myself. And it's not my job, and this is not his baby. They want me to be able to take care of my baby before they give him back. All because I was a child of the system and I got sick when I turned up a teen mom. At one point, the family he was given to, they have been collecting children out of the system for years. The wife that stayed at home had a 10-year-old child from a previous marriage. And then they had, I want to say, 6 other children, 10 and younger, that they have adopted out of fostering. And Vinny was the youngest and made like 7, was it? I can never remember if there was 6 kids total or 6 adopted and the first son, but there was 6 or 7 kids in the home. And they started like actively interfering with visits. They would give me wrong directions to doctor's appointments. They would try to switch doctors because that's where they take their kids to, even though I didn't have a car, and the doctor I took Vinny to was 3 blocks from my apartment. You know, things like that. One particular time there was a visit. I only had him for 4 hours. And the next day I got called down to Human Services to meet with my social worker. And I get in there and my social worker, the social worker's supervisor, some other person, and both the foster moms are in the room. I don't see my baby anywhere though. And I sit down and these women produce pictures of my child's raw, chapped bottom, accusing me of giving him a bloody diaper rash in a 4-hour time period. My social worker had to pull me out of the room. I completely lost my temper for a minute. I threw the papers back on the table. And first of all, you bitches don't need to be photographing my child's genitals like that. And I went on, I was like, I was being very patronizing and sarcastic. I was like, you know, props to you. You guys must have really done something here. You exposed a monster. How horrible must I be to do that in 4 hours? Like, they had to have done this to him. Like, there was no way. My social worker knew what was happening, and she pulled me out of the room before I could say anything that would be a problem for me. She calmed me down. She assured me that it was a non-issue, basically. I was honestly so angry in the moment, I can't even remember her exact words. But she told me she recognizes this for what it is. She knows I didn't do it. This was near the end. This was like a month before he came home. Yeah. When he did come home, it was by Wisconsin state laws, if your child is in CPS custody for 15 out of 22 months, they can terminate your rights. When Vinny came home, just shy of 2 years old, I was 72 hours away from 15 months. These people did everything in their power to just try to run out the clock and take my firstborn son because they wanted him. And from the very beginning, the only thing I ever did was trust the wrong family member with my baby when I got sick, and was my parents' child. And that wasn't even the end of it, unfortunately.
Wow.
I got pregnant with Vinny's little brother about a year after he came home. And during my pregnancy, I got sick again, kidney infections again. I spent most of my second trimester on intravenous IV medication. It was terrifying when I first went into the hospital because I was only 13 weeks, just ended my first trimester. Doctors and nurses, they're freaking out. They're trying to get IVs in me. I had 106-degree fever. And I don't even know what they're reaching for to put in the IV, but I find the doctor, I scan the room, I'm able to find him. And I just asked him, like, what is this going to do to my baby? And I watched the color drain out of this man's face. And he says, "You're pregnant?" And I'm 13 weeks. And he tells me, "Sweetheart, we are going to get you through the night. And if you're still here in the morning, we'll talk about saving the baby." Like, can we say a bedside manner?
What was wrong with you?
The kidney infections came back. There was kidney stones and the infection.
Did you
There were
know
kidney.
that you were pregnant?
Yes, I was 13 weeks pregnant, and the kidney stones came back, and I ended up getting a horrible kidney infection that would not go away. I was taking the bus to night classes at the tech in the middle of winter, second trimester pregnant, with an IV in my arm because they couldn't keep me in the hospital any longer, and I just needed the medication. So I was basically sent home with like at-home care access. Like, I had to call a nurse every 36 hours because the IV would keep blowing in the vein because my veins were done from all of the abuse from the medication. So it was horrible, the whole thing. And what happened was when I was in the hospital on one of those times, I had trusted a neighbor. All this woman had to do was hang on to my child for 12 hours until my sister could pick him up at noon. She did not wake up with her own children the next morning, and the small children made a mess in the kitchen. So she decided to call the child I was pregnant with, his father, whom he was not responsible for Vinny in any way. She blew this man's phone up at 6 a.m. to make this his problem. And he proceeded to come over and beat the shit out of Vinny. Like, he whipped him with a belt. Vinny at the time was 3 years old, 3 feet tall, and 33 pounds. There was a bruise the size of his bicep on his bicep. That bruise was that man's thumbprint from where he held on to Vinny's arm and rose him in the air as he whipped him with his belt. It took 2 months for the discoloration on the bruises to go away, a solid month for the welts to go away. He reverted to wetting the bed. He was daytime and nighttime trained for 1.5 years at that point. And I am not even made aware of this until about 5 hours after it happened. I was still delusional from the fever. By the time I was coherent and was told I have these missed calls, it was already 5 hours later. I send my sister to get my son. And I don't know what exactly took so long. 7 hours passed between my sisters picking him up and me laying eyes on him. And the concern was basically the unborn child's life. This was the morning after. That first night I went into the hospital, and the doctor didn't even know if I was going to live. Somehow me and the baby were still alive and okay. And I think my sisters were trying to prevent me from trauma and miscarrying. I finally got them to bring him to me at 7 o'clock that night. And when I saw him, I cried for about 2 hours because I knew the phone call I was about to make was going to put him in a foster home. And then I made the phone call. John spent 1.5 years in custody and was given 5 on paper. My unborn child had a protection order from the womb. Oh, go ahead.
He was given what? I didn't hear.
A protection order from the womb.
Before that.
John, the child's father, that's his name, John. He was charged and convicted of, I think it was felony battery with intent to do harm to a small child or something like that. And he got 18 months in custody and 5 years on paper. And both my, I'm sorry?
On paper, that's what I didn't hear.
Oh, parole.
Got it.
Yeah. And both myself, my son, and my unborn son were all given protection orders at the time. So like my son was not even like outside of my body yet, and was given a protection order against his own father because of what he did to his brother. Vinny did spend the duration of that pregnancy in foster care because of that. I was, again, they used the same logic. Again, it wasn't anything I did, but somehow the 2 times in my life that literally my life was in jeopardy, the people I trusted with him caused these situations. And you know what they say, fool me once, fool me once, fool me twice. So they were questioning my decision-making ability at best, was the only leg they had to stand on this entire time. I never abused him. I never neglected him. They had nothing on me except I was trying not to die. Like, Vinny came home. Yes.
Being somebody who has health issues myself, and I'm a single mom, and I don't have any family support either.
Right.
You would think that when CPS gets involved, instead of snatching your kids away and being like, "Okay, live alone. You can't watch your kids because you're too sick." You would think that they would come in and be like, "Here's some support. Here's some people that can help you when you're in the hospital."
Exactly. And I finally got to that point. So this was like I said, 3 months pregnant with Dominic is when Vinny went back into foster care, and this happened. When Dominic was 4 weeks old, Vinny came home. I got through the pregnancy. I got my own apartment set up. I did everything, because at this point I was so sick, I was staying with family at the time. So I did everything they told me to do, and they gave him back. And the social worker that we had involved at that time, she actually knew me from when I was 12. Because from start to finish, I had about 20 social workers that need to be fired. But there was one. There was one. She was a good woman. I remembered her from when I was 12. And by sheer luck, she was transferred, to my case when Dominic was born.
Yeah.
And after Vinny came home, and she basically caught up on the last 4 years, is when I actually was asked to speak at a training seminar. I honestly don't even remember all the different job titles that were there, but it was like county workers, their supervisors, people that work in the community, like in these different capacities. And they had a panel of like 3 different people speaking. There was a couple whose child was currently in the system. There was a young woman who was a child of the system, and there was me who was both. And they actually acknowledged that they destroyed my life to such a degree that I was asked to tell them everything they did wrong. So these future employees they are training don't do what happened to me.
Yeah.
And I remember one of them asking me one time, they're like, I say this I still, it's one of the only clear questions I remember from that day. But after I basically told them everything, this lady goes, I say this with respect and admiration. Why are you here? Like, really, after what my department did to you, why are you here talking to us? And I told them, like, that's why I'm here. What do you mean? I am here to make sure, like, you guys never do this to someone else again. Like, I mean, yeah. Thankfully, with all of the bad, I have to say one good thing about the that worker at the end that helped us, because there was a situation when Vinny was in middle school. My younger child, Dominic, I finally reached out to one of his family members because he never met his father, and for reasons obviously, and that man actually died from a drug-induced heart attack when he was 42. So my son was 6, never met his father, and didn't even know to ask about him yet. And yeah. And so a couple years later, you know, when he does start asking questions, I look up a family member. And these individuals attempted to call CPS because I had the nerve to get a job after my divorce, because I am now a single mom again. My sons were 13 and 9. The same social worker that I was talking about, she was involved with my family at the time in a capacity to help Vinny with his autism. There was like social struggles he was having at the middle school she was helping him with. So at the time this was happening, she knew exactly what was happening in my home. She knew where, when, and for how long I was working. She knew if someone was looking in on the kids, if they were home alone at this age and their abilities, and she was not concerned in any way. And these people called CPS talking about, I'm neglecting my kids, I'm neglecting my 9-year-old and leaving him with his autistic brother for several hours while I go to work, like all these things. And Shannon, she refused to even let intake near me. Like, she did not even let them acknowledge the phone call. She was informed because, you know, they do these checks when calls come in to see if this family has any kind of like active caseworker. And so they checked her and her name came up, and she refused to even let them talk to me. She's like, no, you don't have to check anything. This is my family. I know what's going on. I'm not concerned. Thank you for telling me about the phone call, basically.
Yeah.
And that was the end of that. But the anxiety, the mix of PTSD and borderline personality that I have from all of this, like to this day, Vinny officially has not had a social worker or been in foster care for 12 years now. To this day, I will get a panic attack if company stops by unannounced. Like if there was a knock at my door and I have dishes in the sink, like if the kids didn't take the garbage out yet, like my heart goes through my throat every time. And then it almost happened this week. I was telling you about that at the beginning with the phone call that my kid woke me up telling me the police were at the door.
Right.
Yeah. And that whole time, like that triggered my PTSD all week. I slept for the first time for more than 2 hours a day yesterday, since like this past Sunday. And like it's real. Like I'm almost 35 years old. Like my sons are 16 and 12. This has been over for 12 to 14 years.
It doesn't matter.
And I'm scared to leave my kids alone to go to work. He's gonna be a junior. They're teenagers. There is no reason as a single working mom and the sole parent to fatherless children, I should live in fear every time I leave the house. And that's the case for so many of us. Like it's to the like I don't even know what else to say about it. Like it's insane.
I still can't believe that you said you were 72 hours.
72 hours away from losing my firstborn son because I was sick. So I literally could not stay out of the hospital if I wanted to stay alive. And again, because I was one of theirs. I was a child of the system. How dare I get sick as a teen mom?
I worry for my children.
Every day.
more children than this, you know.
Speaking of, oh, I'm back. Sorry, my children keep trying to call the phone.
Oh,
They're
well,
upstairs in the apartment. I'm hiding down in the car. They just want to ask for a snack. I just brought home some snack food from the grocery store.
yeah. Well, okay, so let me ask you one last question.
Okay.
What would you tell people that are listening right now?
The police are not your friend. As bluntly as I can say it, they are not your friend. If they do not have a warrant, do not let them in your home. I don't care what agency name is on their badge. You don't have to answer their questions. You don't have to smile and be nice. These are your children. That's really the best I can say. If you're going through this, much love, mama. Too many of us have been there.
Yeah.
Just keep swimming. I get, we love Nemo in my house. I have to quote Dory on this one. Just keep swimming.
Yeah. Just keep swimming.
Yeah.
Well, Lorelei, I enjoyed visiting with you today. Thank you for sharing your story.
No worries.
I hope you and your boys have a good day and enjoy each other.
Thank you. Hope you and your minis have a great one as well.
Thanks so much. All right.